There are moments in life when a stranger looks at you a fraction too long, not in curiosity, not in threat, but in something older than either, something that feels almost like recognition, but arrives without memory, and in that instant, your mind searches for a file that was never saved. Welcome to Mysterious Encounters. In tonight's entry of the Veil Archives, we do not investigate events. We observe a sensation that refuses to stay in one life. Because some feelings do not belong to the present, they arrive already familiar. It never announces itself. There is no warning, only a moment of collision, a stranger in a hallway, a face in passing, a glance held too long, and suddenly, you are no longer certain. You are meeting them for the first time. It is not attraction. It is not fear. It is recognition without source, like a thought rising in your mind that you did not think. You continue walking, the moment ends, but something remains behind your eyes. A residue of familiarity with no timeline attached to it. Later, when you try to recall it, there is nothing to retrieve, only the echo of certainty that something important occurred without leaving evidence. Across older human traditions, before language became precise enough to separate belief from metaphor, there existed a quiet idea that life does not only repeat souls, but repeats configurations, not identity, not memory, but arrangement, the way a presence is structured. Some writings describe it as breath returning to familiar patterns, not reincarnation in the modern sense, but recurrence of form, a pattern that does not dissolve completely when a life ends or changes. It simply waits, not in time, but in possibility, and when conditions align, it returns, not as the same person, but as the same impression of personhood. This is where the unease begins, because if form can return without memory, then recognition is no longer proof of shared history. It becomes something else entirely, something quieter, something less stable. The most disturbing accounts are not of individuals alone, but of mutual recognition. Two strangers meet, nothing unusual occurs, no context demands significance, and yet, both pause, not physically, but internally, as if a sentence almost completed itself. Inside both minds at once, neither speaks it, but both feel it collapse, and what follows is worse than confusion. It is subtle familiarity, not emotional intensity, but structural alignment, as if their interactions begin slightly late, as though conversation has already happened somewhere else, and they are simply catching up to it. They part ways, and nothing changes outwardly, but internally. The world has shifted slightly off its original position, because now there is a question that cannot be answered without distortion. If recognition can exist without memory, what exactly is being remembered? There is no formal evidence of echo people, only repetition without explanation. Accounts of the same face appearing across years, across cities, across contexts that should erase familiarity completely. And yet it persists, never identical, always slightly altered, like an image copied too many times, but still unmistakably itself. But the deeper observation is not about them, it is about you, because each time it happens, the feeling is not that they are the same, it is that you are the same observer again, as if something inside you is being placed in the exact same position to witness something it has already witnessed before, not memory, position. And that is where the unease settles, not in the people, but in the recurrence of perception itself. Eventually the mind stops trying to solve it, not because it understands, but because understanding no longer changes the feeling. Some encounters remain familiar, without ever becoming known, and some strangers feel less like new arrivals, and more like continuations of something that was never fully observed the first time. And you begin to notice something more subtle, that you, too, are occasionally met with the same kind of stillness in others, as if your presence briefly interrupts their internal timeline, not as a threat, not as significance, but as recognition without permission, and the world continues without acknowledging the overlap, as if nothing is allowed to confirm what repetition keeps suggesting. There are faces you will meet again without ever remembering the first meeting, not because it was forgotten, but because it was never meant to be stored as a single moment, only as recurrence, only as echo, only as the quiet suspicion that familiarity is not something you earn, but something the world occasionally reuses. And then silence, not emptiness, just the space where recognition has not yet decided whether to return again. Not all coincidences are random. Some behave as if they were arranged. A text received seconds before a thought is spoken, a name appearing in two unrelated places within the same hour, a path chosen that seems to answer a question you did not yet know you were asking. At first they are dismissed as chance, noise, pattern seeking. But the pattern does not fade when ignored, it tightens. Because synchronicity is not the feeling that events are connected. It is the unsettling sense that connection existed before the events themselves. And in the next entry of the Veil archives, we examine what happens when coincidence stops being coincidence at all, and begins behaving like intention without an author. Not echo, not memory, but alignment without explanation. The next Veil archives entry, Synchronicities, when reality answers before the question is asked.